In the whispering woods, time was usually marked by the movement of shadows across the moss. But on the Tuesday of the great vanishing, the shadows never arrived. Leo woke to a world that had been erased. When he stepped out of his den, his paws didn't meet the familiar sight of the dew-tipped clover. Instead, they met a wall of white so thick it felt like walking into a cloud of cold wool. The air was heavy and tasted of ancient rain and crushed pearls. "Theft, Arner be," Leo called out. His voice didn't travel. It hit the mist and dropped to the ground, muffled and small. Usually, the woods were a symphony of rustling leaves and distant bird calls. Now, there was only the sound of Leo's own heartbeat. The forest had become a tomb of silence. Ash. As Leo wondered, he realised the danger. The trees, which usually stood as landmarks, had become strangers. He walked for what felt like hours, only to find himself back at the same gnarled route he had started from. He stumbled upon a group of forest animals huddled together. They were holding onto each other's tails and fur in a long, shivering line. "We can't find the berry bushes," Pip the rabbit whimpered. I tried to hop toward the stream, but the ground felt like it was shifting. The mist makes the world feel like it's floating. Anabi the owl sat on a low stump, his great wings tucked tight. "The sky is gone, Leo. There are no stars to guide me, and the moon is just a pale smudge. If we move, we fall. If we stay, we fade." Leo realised this wasn't weather. A normal fog is messy and drifting. This fog was structured. It was woven. Ash. Leo decided to use his whiskers instead of his eyes. He stayed low to the ground, feeling for the vibrations of the earth. Near the edge of the elder thicket, his nose brushed against something that didn't feel like a cobweb. It was a thread of silver silk, as thick as a blade of grass and as strong as iron. It glowed with a faint, pulsing violet light. Leo touched it with a claw, and the thread hummed a low, mournful note, a sound of deep, aching loneliness. "This is the anchor," Leo whispered. He looked up. The thread stretched upward, disappearing into the white void. Leo knew that if he wanted to see the sun again, he would have to follow the music of the silk. Ash. The climb was a test of faith. Leo followed the glowing thread up the jagged rocks of the lonely peaks. As the altitude rose, the mist turned into a swirling vortex. He couldn't see the ground below or the peak above. There was only the silver line. His paws grew cold, and his breath turned to frost on his muzzle. But every time he felt like giving up, the thread would hum again, pulling him forward. It was a song of someone who had been waiting for a very long time. Ash. At the very summit, above the highest clouds, Leo stepped out into a circle of clear, starlit air. In the centre sat Arachne. She was a spider the size of a carriage, but she was not made of hair and shadow. Her body was carved from translucent opal, and her 8 eyes were like polished moonstones. She moved with the grace of a dancer, her many legs pulling actual clouds from the sky and spinning them into the heavy, silver silk that she was casting down into the valley. "You're the weaver," Leo said, his voice echoing in the thin air. Arachne froze. Her 8 eyes turned to the small orange fox. "A witness," she sighed, and the sound was like the clicking of glass beads. "I've woven for 1,000 years, and no one has ever followed the thread." Ash. Why are you drowning the woods, Arachne? Leo asked. "My friends are lost. They are afraid of the white silence." Arachne continued to spin, her legs moving in a blur of silver. "The world is too vast, little fox. It is too full of sharp edges and loud voices. In my mist, The world is small. In my mist, everyone is safe in their own little room of white. If I can't be part of their world, I will make their world part of mine. Leo looked at the vast web she had created. It was a masterpiece of isolation. You aren't protecting them, Leo said gently. You are just making sure that everyone is as lonely as you are. Ash, ash, ash. Arachne stopped spinning. A single tear, like a pearl, rolled from one of her moonstone eyes. I do not know how to be a part of a world I cannot touch. Leo stepped closer. He showed her the bear claw necklace he wore. The mountain bear gave me this so I would never be cold. The tortoise gave me wisdom so I would never be truly lost. They didn't wrap me in silk. They gave me pieces of themselves to carry. He suggested a change. What if your threads didn't block the world? What if they pointed the way? Ash, ash, ash. Under Leo's direction, Arachne began to pull the mist back. But she didn't just let it dissolve. She spun it into guiding threads. Instead of a thick blanket of fog, she created a network of glowing, silver pathways that hovered just above the forest floor. Each thread was tuned to a different destination. A golden thread led to the berry bushes, a blue thread led to the stream, a soft green thread led back to the cozy dens. Leo stayed on the peak all night, helping Arachne tune the forest. They turned the terrifying fog into a beautiful, enchanted map. Ash, ash, ash. When the animals woke the next morning, they gasped. The sun was shining again, but the mist hadn't entirely left. It remained in beautiful, blowing ribbons that acted as paths to the deep brush. Bip the rabbit followed a golden thread and found a patch of clover he had never seen before. Barnaby the owl found that the threads acted like a mirror for the stars, allowing him to hunt even on the cloudiest nights. The forest was no longer a place where you could get lost. It was a place where the paths themselves took care of you. Ash, ash, ash. Arachne remained on her peak, but she was no longer lonely. The animals would often leave gifts at the base of the silver thread's sweet nectar, colourful stones, or bundles of soft moss. Leo returned to his den, but he kept a single silver thread attached to his doorway. Whenever he felt the world was getting a little too loud or a little too vast, he would touch the silk. He would hear the glass-bead laughter of the opal queen, and he would remember that sometimes the best way to find yourself is to help someone else find their way home. For many moons, the Whispering Woods lived in a state of perfect ease. No one ever missed a meeting. No one ever lost their way to the best berry patches. The silver and gold threads woven by Arachne had become as natural to the animals as the trees themselves. But Leo noticed something troubling. The squirrels had stopped remembering where they hid their nuts, relying entirely on the brown thread to find them. Bip the rabbit had stopped sniffing the air for foxes, trusting the safety thread to glow red if danger was near. The animals were losing their wildness, the very instincts that made them part of the forest. The threads were no longer a guide. They had become a crutch. Ash, ash, ash. One evening, the threads began to flicker. The golden light turned a pale, sickly grey, and the humming notes grew out of tune. Leo looked up at the lonely peaks and saw that the summit was shrouded in a dark, heavy storm. Arachne was in trouble. The guiding threads were powered by her connection to the forest's heartbeat, but the animals had stopped giving back. They took the paths for granted, and without the energy of gratitude, Arachne's silk was losing its magic. The mist was returning, but this time, it was a dark, heavy fog born of neglect. Ash, ash, ash. As the threads began to snap and tangle, the forest became a trap. The golden path that used to lead to the meadow now led directly into a thorny thicket. A blue path to the stream now circled endlessly around a single dead tree. "We have to help her," Leo cried to the confused animals. "But we don't know the way," they wailed. "The threads are broken." Leo realized that to save the weaver, he had to teach the animals to find their own way again. He led a small group, not by following a glowing line, but by smelling the damp moss, feeling the tilt of the land, and watching the way the wind bent the grass. He was teaching them to read the forest without the silk. Ash, ash, ash. They reached the base of the lonely peaks. Instead of silk, they brought gifts of the old forest hand-pressed cedar oil, stones shaped by the river, and songs they had written themselves. They climbed the obsidian cliffs using their own strength. When they reached the top, they found Arachne curled into a small, dull ball of opal. She looked like a cold stone. Leo stepped forward and placed a single, wild-grown violet on her back. "We forgot that a path is a conversation, Arachne," Leo whispered. "We stopped listening, but we are here now, and we brought our own light." One by one, the animals shared a memory of the forest that they had rediscovered during their climb. Ash, ash, ash. Arachne began to glow again, but the light was different. It wasn't the permanent, blinding silver of before. It was a soft, pulsing light that matched the rhythm of the trees. She stood up and made a choice. She didn't restore the permanent map. Instead, she wove the silk into whispering veils paths that only appeared when an animal was truly lost or in great need. The forest returned to its natural state, a bit wild, a bit mysterious, and a little bit dangerous. But the animals were stronger for it. They knew their home again. Leo sat on his stump, looking at the occasional silver shimmer in the moonlight. The mist was gone, but the connection remained a reminder that the best way to be guided is to keep your eyes and heart wide open. As autumn chilled into a biting winter, a new phenomenon appeared. The whispering veils that Arachne had left behind began to freeze. The silver silk, once flexible and humming, became brittle like glass. In the moonlight, the forest looked like it was caught in a giant, frozen chandelier. While beautiful, this silver frost posed a new danger. The threads were now sharp, and if a bird flew too fast or a fox ran too carelessly, they could be cut by the very paths that were meant to protect them. Leo realised that the magic of the mist was changing again, reacting to the harshness of the coming snow. Ash, ash, ash. Leo travelled back to the lonely peaks, but the climb was now treacherous, coated in slick, frozen silk. When he reached the top, he found Arachne in a deep, trance-like sleep. She was dreaming, and her dreams were manifesting as jagged, icy spikes of mist that shot out from her opal body. "She is hibernating," Sealers the tortoise whispered, having moved into a mountain cave to escape the wind. "But her magic is restless. She is dreaming of the first loom, the place where the world's weather is made. If she doesn't wake up, the forest will be encased in a tomb of ice." Leo realised he couldn't wake her with a touch. He had to enter her dream. Ash, ash, ash. Using the blue seed's residual magic, Leo sat beside the sleeping weaver and closed his eyes. He found himself in a world made entirely of white light and silver threads. It was the loom of the heart. In this dream space, he saw Arachne as she once was, a tiny, fragile spider afraid of the vastness of the sky. He saw that her mist was her way of building walls to keep the bigness of the world out. Leo walked through her memories, showing her the warmth of the forest animals, the sound of the rain he had brought back, and the courage of the mountain lynx. He showed her that vastness isn't something to fear. It is the space where friendship grows.